This is the body of a woman who died just 28 minutes ago. There's a clear wound on her head caused by a blunt object. But Morgan only needed to lightly touch her pulse to immediately spot a big mistake by the police. She held the face of her watch near the victim's nose, and she was shocked to see a thin layer of mist appear on the glass.
Because there was no detectable pulse at the time.
She's still alive.
It turns out the woman was still alive. Now, the victim's identity has been confirmed. She has a fractured skull, but if the surgery goes well, she might wake up in a few days. Also, there are metal traces at the wound, so the weapon could be a hammer or a metal tool. Adam looked up missing persons records and found that the victim was a graduate student at the University of California named Heather Wallace. A year ago, her boyfriend Morris reported her missing to the police. Surprisingly, Morris is 17 years older than her. Even though they only dated for a few months, when talking about the past, her ex-boyfriend couldn't hold back his tears. When asked where he was on the night of the incident, Morris calmly said he was at home, busy choosing floor tiles. What's even stranger is that the University of California has no record of a student named Heather. But when they checked her fingerprints, the victim's real name turned out to be Penny Hall. Could it be that Morris found out he was being lied to, so he attacked her on the beach out of revenge? It's clear that figuring out the victim's true identity will make it easier to find the killer. Morgan and Adam went to Penny's apartment. According to the landlord, Penny's boyfriend was killed 2 years ago. But it seems Morris had no idea about this. What secret is hidden behind this case? At that moment, Morgan noticed a designer bag on the sofa. It wasn't cheap. She found lots of expensive high heels in the closet, which didn't match the modest apartment Penny was renting. Even more surprising, Penny's credit card statements showed no big purchases. But the most shocking thing was that she was spending $2,500 a month to rent a billboard. When Morgan looked through the pile of luxury clothes, she found a clue hidden behind them. It turns out the victim had a close connection to her dead boyfriend, Lucas Phillips.
Could have something to do with that.
Penny had done everything she could to investigate Lucas's death, even renting a billboard to gather leads. It was an unsolved case. Lucas was suspected of being robbed and murdered on the beach. The cause of death was also a hard blow to the back of his head with a blunt object. But oddly, Penny's diamond necklace was still untouched, which might prove Lucas wasn't killed in a robbery. It's even possible that the person who killed him was the same one who attacked Penny. On Lucas's hair, there were tiny grains of rice, but this detail wasn't mentioned in the case file. This could only mean two things. Either the victim had just been to a wedding, or he liked sifting rice for fun. Also, Lucas used to be a tennis coach at a beach club. The killer might be one of the club's members. Clearly, Penny didn't have enough money to join the club as a member. So, she came up with a plan to use a fake identity and date Morris. That way, she could sneak into the club and investigate her boyfriend's death. Morgan and Adam went to the club to meet two brothers who inherited their grandfather's business. The younger brother admitted he knew Penny because she was Morris's girlfriend. As for Lucas, they said he used to be a tennis coach there. Everything seemed normal, with nothing suspicious. But two things caught Morgan's attention. First, the younger brother didn't want to cooperate with the police. Second, the club manager had a bruised eye. Morgan learned that the day before, a stranger was trying to sell drugs. The manager tried to stop him but got beaten up and left with a black eye. If this person was kicked out of the beach before Penny was attacked, he could be the killer, or at least an important witness. Luckily, the manager still remembered the guy's name. Cameron Smith, also known as Swizz. They happened to notice the name on a surfboard matched the one the manager mentioned. After questioning him, they learned that this man had indeed talked to Penny the previous night. But he only warned her to stop following him, as if he were the one who killed her boyfriend. The meeting happened around 9 p.m., before he went into the club. Plus, he wasn't selling anything illegal. He was there to collect money from the club owner. Right then, Adam got news that Penny had woken up. Morgan and Adam rushed to the hospital. Morris was still by her bedside, not caring about the past, continuing to look after Penny. They learned that the night before, Penny had received a call with a lead. The caller said he had witnessed her boyfriend's death. But when Penny arrived at the beach, someone knocked her out from behind. Now, the only thing she had left was the necklace, a keepsake Lucas gave her a week before he died. More importantly, Lucas had a conflict with the younger brother of the club owner, and he was suspended from his job afterward. But getting close to this younger brother wasn't easy since he was heavily protected by the club owner. Morgan and Adam returned to the club. But the older brother made an excuse, saying his younger brother was busy negotiating with a sponsor. Morgan noticed that the brother's office was full of souvenirs. Soon after, they met a beautiful woman. Surprisingly, She was wearing a necklace identical to the one Penny had. But Morgan realized the diamond on this woman's necklace was actually just cheap moissanite. Moissanite is a natural silicon carbide, discovered by French scientists in a meteor crater. It's hard for most people to tell it apart from a real diamond. The woman didn't know who Penny was, but she knew Lucas.
I gave the real one to Lucas.
It turns out this woman was having an affair with the customer service manager, the younger brother of the club owner, Blaine Wilson. Even more shocking, her husband was a city council member. If this affair came to light, the club could lose its liquor license. Lucas had discovered this secret. To keep him quiet, the woman gave him an expensive necklace. To avoid her husband noticing, she bought a fake necklace to wear in front of him. Putting everything together, the motive for the murder might be that the younger brother was afraid of the affair being exposed, so he killed Lucas. But what about the rice grains found in the victim's hair? Morgan noticed that the victim's shorts were wet, but his hair was dry. If he was killed at 10 p.m., his body should have been on the beach all night. The tide comes in twice a day, once in the afternoon and once around 1 or 2 a.m. So, when the body was found the next morning, it should have been completely soaked by the sea. Clearly, the beach wasn't the original crime scene. The killer put the body in a suitcase, waited for the tide to go out, and then secretly moved it to the beach to fake the scene. Now, the suspect pointed back to the person Penny had suspected from the start. But since the crime happened 2 years ago, finding evidence was incredibly difficult. They spent a whole day investigating but still couldn't find any solid clues. However, as Morgan left Adam's house, the flashing lights outside sparked an idea. She immediately turned back and knocked on her colleague's door. It turns out the killer was the club owner himself. Back in the late 1870s, someone tried to invent a bright light for surgery but accidentally created a snow globe as a souvenir, and that snow globe was the murder weapon. The inventor tested many materials, and rice grains turned out to be the best floating material. Also, there were traces of glycol in the victim's nasal cavity, a chemical used in antifreeze, which is the liquid inside snow globes. Plus, in the club owner's office, there were souvenirs from Mediterranean trips, but the one from Greece was missing. Morgan figured that the victim had discovered the younger brother was involved in drug dealing and fraud. So he gave the club owner an ultimatum. Fix it, or he'd go to the police. To protect his brother and the club's reputation, the older brother killed him by grabbing the snow globe and hitting him hard on the back of the head. Not expecting Penny to keep investigating, he decided to attack her to cover his tracks. However, these theories still lacked solid proof. They needed to make the club owner confess. So, Morgan came up with a plan. The police suddenly stormed into the club, and the owner panicked, immediately looking at the security cameras. But when they burst into his office, he was already gone. Morgan remembered a photo of the two brothers, along with the locations in the pictures Penny had stored in her closet. I think I know where he's heading. They raced to the beach, where the older brother was standing on a cliff. He wanted to end it all. It was his younger brother's advice that stopped him from taking his secrets to the grave. Both cases were finally solved, and Penny got the answers she'd been searching for. That night, Morgan had planned to go on a date, but the police chief called her. It turns out there was new progress in the disappearance of her first husband, Roman. Before he went missing, Roman had met several times with a man named Gio Conforth, but Morgan had never heard of him. Though Gio had no criminal record, after some digging, they found he was a very shady individual, operating on the edge of the law, specializing in helping people fight over certain assets.
So we're working on a plan to get him here. Set up an interview, get some answers.
This Geo sounds like a hard guy to find.
He is.
But you found him, didn't you?
I did.
At a glance, Morgan sizes up the accident scene and helps the police pinpoint the vehicle involved. She doesn't just deduce the brand and color. She even narrows down the year of manufacture. A witness claims the engine roared like an airplane, which instantly reminds her of the author behind the 007 spy novels. Her colleagues stand there, stunned. Morgan finally delivers her answer.
Bond felt he was in a low-flying plane rather than an automobile as he accelerated the Jensen. The Jensen Interceptor had a Chrysler V8 engine, loud as hell, like a plane taking off.
The paint scrape on the victim's watch matches the distinct blue undercoat of a Jensen. The wheelbase is only 69 inches, way too short for a typical American sports car. So, the hit-and-run vehicle has to be a Jensen Interceptor, and its color is a deep magenta blue. If Morgan is right, the car is likely stashed in the parking lot of the apartment complex across the street. To avoid getting caught, the culprit likely hid it close by. After some searching, a covered vehicle in the lot catches their eye.
Ta-da! That's a Jensen Interceptor.
The front bumper is dented, paint chipped, but the license plate is missing. The victim, a famous sports commentator, draws heavy media attention to the case. A witness even suggests it was murder, since the driver didn't just hit the victim but circled back to run them over multiple times. Surprisingly, the victim's son shows up at the station. He is convinced the killer is his father's young mistress. Last year, his dad fell hard for her, even changing his will to make her the sole heir. Coincidentally, when the accident happened, the victim was on a call with his son, about to discuss revising the will, only to be struck and killed moments later. Morgan and Adam head straight to the victim's mansion. A young black woman greets them. While grabbing water from the fridge, Morgan scans the house's interior. She never misses a detail, knowing the key to cracking a case often hides in the smallest things. Back in the living room, she deliberately bumps Adam toward the other side of the sofa, using the moment to secretly pocket something. From their conversation, they learn the woman was like an adopted daughter to the victim. Their relationship seems murky but lacked any physical intimacy. She didn't push for the will change and doesn't care if she is cut out of it. More importantly, she never learned to drive, so how can she commit the crime? A typical man ready for intimacy has blood flowing in a certain pattern, but the victim's desk holds blood thinners and antidepressants, drugs that reduce circulation to key areas. A 70-year-old like him was probably just grumbling, not acting. Still, the woman seems to genuinely care for him. In the fridge, his lunch bag has a little heart drawn on it by her. Then, a phone rings out of nowhere. The item Morgan swipes is a cell phone. Under Adam's firm insistence, she returns it to its owner. Back at the station, they learn the victim's neighbor, who had a feud with him, has a solid alibi. Digging deeper into the car, they discover the neighbor's company owned a vehicle matching the description. The police move to arrest him, but the neighbor is thrilled, not nervous. A classic car collector with 4 vintage rides, he said his Majolica blue Jensen Interceptor was stolen the previous week. Then he recalls something crucial. The victim often went on car club trips. During those, the neighbor noticed a motorcyclist sneaking into the victim's garage. On one trip, the victim stayed home, and 2 minutes later, the neighbor saw the biker speeding out of the garage, half-dressed. Morgan reviews the surveillance footage and realizes this is their killer. Though his face is masked, a quick phone search reveals his identity.
Killer's name is Olivier Dubois, and he works at Hollywood Auto.
The woman's missed call comes from an auto shop, and Morgan knows mechanics can be smooth talkers. Plus, the suspect's shoes sport a bold logo from a famous French brand, hinting at his fashion sense. Most telling, he stands 6 feet 5 inches tall. Each brick in the footage is 20 centimeters, and he measures about 9.5 bricks, roughly 193 centimeters or 6 feet 5 inches. Auto shops post their mechanics' photos online, and Morgan, with her keen eye, figures a guy wearing those shoes isn't a greasy mechanic. That leaves one young, handsome guy. And who would the woman date? Naturally, the tall, 6'5" guy. The motive is shockingly simple. When the victim caught his girlfriend cheating, he flew into a rage and kicked the mechanic out. Burning with resentment, the mechanic knew about the victim's legal spat with the neighbor. He stole the neighbor's vintage car to stage the murder as a hit and run, framing the unlucky neighbor. He fled the scene, leaving the police to point fingers at the wrong guy. Morgan and Adam head to the auto shop to confront him, but the suspect bolts at the sight of them. Adam springs into action, tackling him with a slick move, ensuring he can't escape. The truth comes to light. Why does the woman lie? She knows the police will eventually track down the mechanic, and if caught, he'll be deported to France over visa issues. She genuinely loves both men but never expects things to end this way. To ease her guilt, she gives up her inheritance. This allows the victim's son to fund a school transfer for his autistic adopted sister. At the press conference after the case, Morgan, as a police consultant, earns public recognition for the first time. But what thrills her more is news about her missing husband. The police chief tracks down a mysterious broker tied to her husband for the past 15 years. That night, Morgan tails a stranger to a church. She watches him enter, a strange unease stirring in her chest. She feels adrift, unsure of what awaits her. At a park, kids play on the slide. One child goes down the slide but disappears. The second child follows, and soon all the kids scream inside the slide. A man rushes over to check and pulls out the body of a woman. Morgan unlocks the victim's phone and finds a key clue the police overlooked. There are 8 unread messages, enough to confirm the victim worked as a hired nanny. Oddly, her contacts list has no emergency numbers or anyone saved as a parent or relative. The coroner concludes the victim died from a heavy blow to the head. But why did she die inside a park slide? Morgan and Detective Adam jump into action. Their first stop is the home of the family who sent the urgent messages pushing the nanny to get to work. The husband suddenly recalls that recently, the nanny noticed something strange. She kept complaining that everywhere she went, a man seemed to follow her. That man often reads a French newspaper and, most notably, walks with a limp. Morgan instantly thinks of the only French newsstand in Los Angeles. Across from it sits a restaurant, a perfect spot to watch someone. Soon enough, both spot a well-dressed man walking by. They follow him and discover he's not just a private investigator but also a former cop Adam knows well. He followed the victim for a long time and even took hundreds of photos of her. The biggest shock comes when they learn the family the nanny worked for hired him to spy on her. It turns out the couple suspected the nanny of mistreating their kids. Morgan and Adam head back to the family's house. The husband acts completely unaware of the situation, but the wife admits everything. She explains that 6 months ago, a post in a parents' chat group terrified her. Due to the previous nanny's negligence, her child ran into the street alone. Furious, she fired that nanny and hired a new one. Since then, things slowly got back to normal. But not long after, she read an even scarier post. It claimed a nanny threatened the kids' lives, yet the kids adored her. Worried the same could happen to her child, she hired the private investigator to keep tabs. In the end, he found nothing unusual. Morgan glances at the post, snaps a screenshot, and sends it to her phone. Morgan and Adam immediately track down the parent who posted the message. But she denies everything and doesn't recall what she said earlier. She only remembers that 6 months ago, they saw their child in danger and posted a warning. When it comes to getting the nanny fired, she didn't think that far ahead and just acted in a panic. Besides, her husband mainly took care of the kids, so she doesn't know much about the local nannies. Seeing a child left unattended, she simply posts to alert other parents. Since then, she hasn't even logged back into her account. The investigation stalls. At that moment, the police uncover a new lead. The victim's phone holds affectionate messages showing someone pursued her intensely. Next, Morgan and Adam visit the victim's home. Morgan quickly spots a cross necklace, suggesting the victim had religious faith. A printed paper on the table reveals she knew someone harassed her online. A pepper spray canister sits by the bed, showing she genuinely fears for her safety. A lawyer's phone number hangs on the wall. But when they call, they learn this lawyer only handles immigration cases. A schedule on the calendar shows that on the night she was killed, the victim planned to go to church. Still, no evidence yet points to the family or the poster as the killer. So they shift their focus to the person pursuing the victim. In the trash, they find a flyer advertising him. Even more surprising, when they meet, the guy flat out says he knows who the killer is. It turns out the victim once nannied for his kids. He stood outside her house, singing love songs through a loudspeaker to win her over. But at that moment, a married man named Mark showed up and stopped him from pursuing her. After a harsh rejection, he believes Mark killed the victim out of jealousy. At the same time, while reviewing the private investigator's photos, Morgan and Adam notice a key detail. The victim shared a close bond with Mark, and he holds a baseball bat that matches the murder weapon's shape. Even more, Morgan notices the nanny wears Mark's sports jacket. Could this be a secret romance? And could that be the real reason behind the murder? It turns out Mark plays for a baseball team from Seattle. Plus, he knows the family of the woman who posted the accusation against the nanny. But after digging deeper, they find the nanny simply borrowed Mark's jacket because it was cold. The suspicious-looking baseball bat is actually just a plastic toy for the kids. The two only met by chance while taking kids to the park. At most, they're casual acquaintances. Now, the investigation hits another dead end. Luckily, they uncover a crucial clue in the private investigator's photos. It turns out the local nannies are very close, spending nearly every day caring for kids together. Plus, the coroner finds no defensive wounds on the victim's body. This suggests the killer is likely someone she knew. So Morgan and Adam return to the park and question the group of nannies again. This time, Morgan notices all their lunchboxes have color-coded labels. But suspiciously, they all insist the victim only had one friend, Mark. Yet one day, Mark's wife showed up, yelling at both the victim and Mark, leading to a huge fight. These scattered clues still don't fully connect. Especially since all the suspects have alibis. Right then, the police receive an unexpected call, turning the case in an unpredictable direction. It turns out the account that posted the negative claims about the victim used fake personal info. They immediately go back to the woman who posted the claims, Mark's wife. But when questioned, she just gives a bitter smile, saying her argument with her husband was only about their home's flooring. That answer clearly doesn't help the case. However, Morgan spots something suspicious. All the negative posts about the nanny appear between noon and 1 p.m. This is exactly when the nannies usually take their break. If they think the other way around, who could infiltrate a parents' group full of complaints about nannies? It can only be the nannies themselves, faking the account. They impersonated the woman who posted, spreading false rumors about their colleague. The victim faced false criminal accusations from a baseless claim. Worse, she lowered the standard pay rate and, most importantly, replaced their friend. Each child's lunchbox has a Spice Girls sticker, showing the 5 nannies formed a tight-knit group. Morgan uncovers a key detail at the employer's house. The lunchbox of the previously fired nanny still sits in the kitchen cabinet. This proves the victim didn't want to use that lunchbox and was isolated from the nanny group. In the group, the Russian nanny is the killer. In Russian, the days of the week don't use capitalization, and the writing style has a unique flair. Plus, the way they make the sign of the cross differs. Catholics use all 5 fingers, moving from left to right across the chest. Eastern Orthodox Christians use 3 fingers, moving from right shoulder to left. The killer belongs to the latter group, while the victim was a devout Catholic. Also, the 2 denominations followed different calendars. The day the victim marked the cross on her calendar, September 27th, shows it wasn't a day for church prayer but a visit to the killer's house. She discovered the other nanny was the one spreading bad rumors about her online. Earlier, she consulted a lawyer and planned to sue the killer for identity theft. The park sits just a street away from the church, and the victim confronted the killer right there. But as she turned away, the killer struck her hard on the head. Though she didn't die on the spot, in her panic and fear of being chased, the victim tried to escape and hid in the slide. But due to massive blood loss, she didn't survive. After the interrogation, the other nannies finally confess everything to protect themselves. The killer is arrested shortly after, and this tangled murder case officially closes. 10 years ago, an old man killed his son-in-law, but only confesses to his family on his deathbed.
I killed Barry.
The children and grandchildren present can't believe their ears. But the old man recorded the entire crime in a video, with shocking evidence. News quickly spreads to the police station, and the 2 officers who handled the case back then open champagne to celebrate. Selena, however, fumes with anger, feeling challenged that a case unsolved for 10 years ends this way.
The Bucket Lane murder.
It turns out this case is one of the 10 most famous unsolved mysteries in Los Angeles. Back then, the female police chief, still a detective, directly investigated the case. But the suspect was acquitted due to lack of evidence. The murder happened on the Monday after Thanksgiving. The son-in-law was killed in the family's sauna. Early that morning, the housekeeper found the body, charred black. At first, it looks like an accident, but the autopsy report reveals the cause of death as a broken neck. Police theorized that the killer pushed the victim down the stairs, breaking his neck, then moved him to the sauna to cover it up. But the mother-in-law of the house claims that at midnight, she saw her son-in-law in a bathrobe, heading to the basement on his own. At that time, the whole family already went to bed, and she didn't hear any strange noises. However, a blood stain from the victim appears on a shirt in the laundry basket. The shirt belongs to the old man who just passed away. So he immediately became the prime suspect. Surprisingly, at the same time, police arrested a dealer of illegal substances in a parking lot just 5 blocks from the crime scene. Among the victim's belongings, they also found traces of a substance. The defense lawyer argued this could be a killing tied to a deal gone wrong. Plus, the criminal had visited the house on the night of the murder. Not to mention, the old man was a philanthropist and the president of a prestigious local trade association. Most importantly, he had a hip replacement surgery, making it impossible for him to drag a body into the sauna. So the jury unanimously declared him not guilty. And just like that, the mysterious case, unsolved for 10 years, became an unending obsession for the police chief.
Every cop has that one case they can't get out of their head. This one's mine.
To ease her regret, Selena hands the cold case file to Morgan. Just by glancing at the crime scene photos, Morgan spots a small detail the police overlooked back then. After an all-night study, Morgan even recreates the entire murder process in detail.
George Donovan did not push his son-in-law down the stairs. In fact, no one did.
It turns out the killer hears the victim showering in the hallway bathroom and sneaks in quietly. He finds a hairdryer, which matches the autopsy report showing the victim suffered a heart attack. The killer knows this well, plugs the hairdryer into the outlet, and throws it straight into the tub. The victim dies instantly from the electric shock, But at that moment, the outlet catches fire. The killer quickly puts out the fire but can't avoid leaving traces of a murder. The more pressing issue now is moving the victim's body up to the laundry chute on the upper floor. This action broke the victim's neck and left a bloodstain on the old man's shirt. Then the killer pushes the body into the sauna, positioning the victim as if relaxing in the heat. Finally, he places an empty wine bottle nearby, staging the scene as a drunken accident.
And that is how Barry Johnson met his maker.
Her colleagues stand there, stunned. A case unsolved for 10 years gets cracked by a consultant in just one night. No one expects Morgan to also find solid evidence. It turns out the burned outlet in the room was replaced with a different electrical panel. Not only that, the killer deliberately replaced several wallpaper sections to cleverly hide the burn marks. But here's the thing. Modern hairdryers have a safety feature to prevent electrical leaks, so how could it kill someone? In reality, the Consumer Product Safety Commission set manufacturing standards in 1990. But the hairdryer in this house is a vintage model from the 80s, before those rules existed. As for the mother-in-law saying she saw her son-in-law heading downstairs, she likely had too much to drink and saw wrong. However, if the victim was indeed killed before midnight, any family member could be the killer. Right after, Selena takes Morgan and Adam to meet the family. Unexpectedly, just as they leave, a reporter shows up at the station for an interview.
Hi, I'd like to speak to your detectives about the Bucket Lane murder.
The reporter brings a documentary poster, claiming she knows the recently deceased man gave a false confession. It turns out she's the old man's eldest daughter-in-law. Her father-in-law signed a deal to film a documentary about the murder but canceled it weeks ago. The reason he gave was not wanting the family to suffer more. If so, why did he confess to the murder right before dying? This documentary is her big project, so she wants to gather more material about the investigation at the station. But the reporter's flashy actions catch the eye of a lieutenant who worked on the case years ago. That means Selena doesn't have much time. If she can't reopen the case, her superiors will face a lot of trouble. Meanwhile, the three of them gain permission to enter the mansion to verify the case details. When they open the bathroom outlet, they find burn marks in shock. Next, they move the double bed in the victim's bedroom, immediately revealing a charred wall panel. Then Morgan stuffs a dummy into the laundry chute while Selena and Adam stand in the basement, testing their theory.
That'd break a neck.
She was right.
When the family returns to the mansion, the three start the interrogation. 5 family members are still alive. On the left is the victim's wife, in the middle is the victim's son, on the right is the victim's mother-in-law. Behind them are the wife's younger sister and the wife's older brother. As the interrogation unfolds, the truth about the murder night 10 years ago slowly comes to light. First, the whole family took a group photo, then started dinner. Soon after, the victim began throwing insults at everyone. The father-in-law grew extremely annoyed. The youngest son felt disgusted and left the dining room. But at that moment, the wife's sleeve suddenly caught fire from a candle on the table. After putting out the fire, everyone was horrified to see bruises on her body, clear signs of abuse. The father-in-law flew into a rage. But the son-in-law stubbornly denied everything. The wife's older brother, furious, lunged at him to attack. Yet the victim showed a dismissive attitude and casually went upstairs. Dinner ended in tension. That night, no one agreed to let the couple sleep in the same room. The eldest daughter-in-law went to help clean up. At that time, the victim was watching TV and shamelessly threw pajamas in her face. After that, the family started playing a card game. The son happily went downstairs to join. But strangely, the TV sound from the victim's room upstairs echoed loudly, disturbing the floor below. So the wife's younger brother and the wife's older brother volunteered to go upstairs to stop the victim. The mother also asked them to clean up the Christmas decorations while they were at it. However, when they got there, no one saw the victim. They knocked on the door, but no one answered, so they eventually left. After that, the wife's older brother went to the attic as his mother asked. At the same time, the eldest daughter-in-law saw the wife's younger brother, struggling with addiction, meeting a dealer of illegal substances right outside the house. After everyone went to bed, the mother-in-law was the last to finish cleaning the living room. She drank a glass of wine, turned around, and suddenly saw her son-in-law in a bathrobe, heading to the basement alone. With events overlapping, Morgan still can't figure out who the real killer is. At that moment, the former police chief arrives with the detective who once handled the case. He can't accept the huge risk of reopening a case only to fail again. If that happens, the entire police station will face a storm of public backlash. Right then, Morgan gets a sudden idea. Looking at the remote control, she suddenly figures out the killer's true identity.
Lieutenant,
Yeah,
I know who did it.
Then, in front of the police station leaders and the victim's family, Morgan finally reveals the answer. It turns out the mother-in-law truly saw wrong. The person in the bathrobe heading to the basement wasn't the son-in-law, because the victim was killed before midnight. The real killer is the son, the one who seemed the most harmless. Having long known his father abused his mother, he decided to end it once and for all. While hiding upstairs, he overheard his father showering in the bathroom. Seeing this as the perfect chance, he quietly grabbed the hairdryer, plugged it in, and threw it into the tub. He expected his father to die instantly, but what he didn't anticipate was the outlet catching fire. So he quickly changed his plan. First, he dragged his father's body to the laundry chute and threw it down. Then he went back to clean up all traces of the fire. Next, he calmly went downstairs and joined the family card game. This created a perfect alibi. At midnight, under his grandmother's watch, he sneaked to the basement. The mother-in-law only saw the bathrobe and didn't realize it wasn't her son-in-law wearing it. Then he moved the body and staged the scene as someone relaxing in the sauna. He even placed an empty wine bottle nearby. Finally, he adjusted the sauna's temperature setting, thinking everything was perfect. He didn't forget to hang the bathrobe on the rack outside. But he didn't expect that the fall from the chute would break his father's neck. This caused a drop of blood to splatter on his grandfather's shirt. With such airtight reasoning, can he still deny it? The son's mother immediately protests, saying her son played games all night. Plus, her husband was still watching TV so loudly back then. But Morgan's next explanation completely breaks the son's mental defense. It turns out the TV remote in the house uses radio frequency, with a wider and more flexible range. While playing cards with the family, he kept changing the TV channels upstairs, making everyone think his father was still there. At this point, the son finally lowers his head and admits his crime. He long wanted to tell the truth, but his grandfather spent his whole life protecting him. This left him living in guilt and self-blame, to the point of becoming a failure. But he didn't know that back then, he was still a minor. With a good lawyer, he might have only faced 3 years in jail. And so, the case that lingered for 10 years is finally solved. Morgan's skills also earn recognition from the police chief. This further proves that Selena's project to recruit special consultants is absolutely the right move. That evening, after work, Morgan suddenly notices a 5-star badge on her jacket. A man on a plane sips wine while his pet dog jumps into his lap for a pet. Right after landing, the man suddenly struggles to breathe, foams at the mouth, and passes away. A tech mogul was poisoned right on the plane. But as soon as the police start investigating, the FBI jumps in to take over the case. Their reasoning is that all crimes in U.S. airspace fall under FBI jurisdiction. Morgan, however, stresses that determining jurisdiction right now seems a bit rushed. The victim's blood vessels burst, and that cause simply couldn't happen on the plane. FBI agent Ronnie questions her.
Who are you?
Morgan.
She's a consultant.
The two sides quickly form separate investigation teams. Adam insists on bringing the body back for examination, while Morgan wants to board the plane to check the scene, but the FBI firmly blocks her. Adam doesn't want to escalate tensions, so he reluctantly leads Morgan away from the scene. Still, they don't give up on the investigation. The victim founded an internet company, and the social media platform he created always stirred controversy, even impacting politics with statements made on it. At that moment, FBI agent Ronnie unexpectedly approaches them. It turns out he used to be a colleague when he worked here, and now he wants the police's initial findings. With the shared goal of solving the case, the three head to the coroner's office.
There, the coroner finds a small mark on the victim's neck, like a needle prick.
Based on the manner of death, it's highly likely the victim was poisoned with a type of toxin from the anthrax family. To identify the exact toxin, they need to transfer the body to the FBI lab for further testing. Next, the team moves to question the victim's security team. On the surface, they don't seem suspicious, but a detailed schedule reveals a key lead. It turns out they didn't shadow the victim 24/7 like everyone assumed. Once, the victim went to Orange County and stayed in a hotel for 2 hours for a secret meeting, leaving his security team to wait outside in the car. Morgan suddenly finds a USB in the victim's jacket pocket, and oddly, it definitely doesn't belong to him. Back in high school, the victim made his first tech breakthrough, designing a high-capacity flash drive. Plus, his company still produces this device, so logically, he wouldn't use a competitor's product. Morgan immediately wants to check the USB's contents. But as soon as she plugs it into the office computer, the entire system gets infected with a virus. This further proves the USB's owner had close contact with the victim and is likely the prime suspect. When it comes to tracking people, this is the FBI's specialty. Morgan and Adam quickly head to their analysis department. Surprisingly, the FBI's crime data expert makes a bold claim. The killer is likely a white, single, unemployed man. Most importantly, he has the skills to easily approach the victim. Doesn't that mean the killer is a professional assassin?
Do you have something you want to add?
Well, I don't have any formal training in profiling.
We know.
The atmosphere grows tense, but Morgan doesn't back down. Considering the victim's controversial stance on tech, she believes the killer must deeply hate him, a tech-hating nerd. He might be an extremist against advanced tech, furious at what the victim's company has done. This case feels more like a personal grudge. Morgan's gut instinct completely contradicts the FBI's professional analysis. Surprisingly, results come in quickly.
The tech team just found a suspicious man in the surveillance footage.
He secretly slipped the USB into the victim's pocket. Facial recognition identifies him as an unemployed young drifter. But after questioning, the guy with glasses admits he just wanted the victim's attention. He found a security flaw in the victim's company system, so he deliberately planted the USB virus to prove his skills, hoping to pitch cybersecurity services and make money. He's just a hacker looking for a job, completely unaware that the victim was poisoned. Still, his statement isn't enough to convince the FBI. As the vehicle carrying the body reaches a red light intersection,
A man in black, holding a gun, approach, taps on the window, and pulls the driver onto the road.
he's masked, quickly checks the body, then plants a remote-controlled bomb in the car. The case hasn't even been solved, and the victim's body explodes into pieces. The FBI nearly loses it, tensions rising to the point of a near brawl at the station. Luckily, Morgan steps in, reminding everyone to focus on more important clues. The victim's 2-hour secret meeting before his death, and who could create such a deadly poison. To research the toxin, they need to use the FBI's database. But Ronnie still doubts Morgan's abilities. At that moment, Adam, fed up, suggests a bet.
And if we come up empty, we'll back off the case.
The sooner they cut ties, the better for solving the case.
So Ronnie happily agrees.
Over a dozen toxicology experts could have made this poison. Plus, the data to sift through amounts to several terabytes.
This is no small challenge for Morgan.
She works tirelessly through the night and finally finds a breakthrough. She discovers a toxicologist named Kenneth Sutton, who resigned 3 years ago after his daughter passed away. Since then, he lives in seclusion, completely cut off from the outside world. The reason his daughter passed away was online harassment, and coincidentally, it happened on the social platform the victim developed. Clearly, this is the motive for the crime. The key detail is that Kenneth only left his house once last week, just to visit the cemetery and lay flowers for his loved one. But when reviewing surveillance footage, Morgan notices Sutton wears gloves while placing flowers on his daughter's grave, but not on others' graves. This event aligns with the timing of the crime, just 2 days before the victim was killed. This suggests the poison was likely hidden cleverly in the flower bouquet, and the killer could have retrieved it to commit the crime. Right away, the two rush to the suspect's house. They catch Kenneth just as he returns home. Realizing he's been exposed, he panics and bolts down the stairs. Adam and Morgan immediately chase after him. An unexpected accident happens. Kenneth, in his panic, slips over the railing. And just like that, the poison maker they worked so hard to find dies on the spot from the accident. Afterward, the two head to his residence, hoping to find any remaining clues. Sure enough, Morgan's analysis is spot on. The suspect is indeed a reclusive old man who despises social media. But what she didn't expect is that Kenneth also has the personality of a butterfly, meaning someone with a volatile mindset, calm one moment and explosive the next.
Everyone's got a different organizing style. Like ladybugs prefer to have lots of storage to hide their mess. Now, bees build their hives very structured and efficient, so the bee organizing style is much more methodical. Whereas crickets like to have things very neat and orderly, with just a couple of sentimental items front and center. Butterflies like to have everything out in the open, so there's quick and easy access to everything. Much like Kenneth does.
So everything here is arranged with a purpose. No TV, no computer, not even any tech devices at all. But who really used the poison? Right then, Ronnie calls. Luckily, Adam kept his cool, turning a pointless argument into necessary cooperation. Back at the station, Adam realizes a key detail. If the victim had a security team, the mark on his body couldn't be from a struggle with someone else. This means during the 2-hour secret meeting, the victim had some sort of physical contact. Fortunately, Ronnie tracks down the person the victim met. It's a young, beautiful woman who booked a hotel in Orange County right before the incident. Soon after, they bring her in for questioning. They discover that during the meeting, a heated argument broke out. This caused a slight bruise on the victim's wrist. As for the needle-like mark on his neck, it's actually just a scratch from her earring. Further checking phone GPS data, they confirm that neither the woman nor the glasses-wearing hacker ever went near the cemetery. That means the person who took the poison is the real killer. But who is the person in that infrared photo? Morgan remembers seeing some books on the shelf, tightly sealed in plastic bags. At that moment, Morgan suddenly has a realization. She looks at the book titles and spots an important message. In one book, there's a famous quote.
2 flints to make a fire.
Yeah, I think those books belong to Kenneth's daughter.
Parker had a flint hanging on his keychain, most likely a gift from Julie.
It turns out Parker and Kenneth's daughter were a couple before she passed away. Kenneth crafted the complex poison, coated it onto a dog collar, hid it in the flower bouquet, and placed it on his daughter's grave. Parker picked up the collar and secretly put it on the victim's pet dog. During the flight, the victim had close contact with the dog, unaware that the poison was slowly seeping through his skin. But when the FBI moves in to arrest him, a major problem arises. As the task force reaches the hotel, they find Parker already fled. Satellite data shows he's heading to Valley Airport, preparing to steal the victim's private plane. Adam immediately calls his team, ordering the hacker to breach the aviation system. Meanwhile, the team races after him in their cars. At that moment, the plane's engine suddenly loses power. Parker, helpless, bolts outside but gets surrounded on all sides. With no way out, Parker finally drops his gun and surrenders. The case of the tech mogul's poisoning is successfully solved. Adam and FBI agent Ronnie also make amends after their tense standoff. But most surprisingly, Adam turns down an attractive offer from the FBI. Because now, he has a better partner, Morgan.
What did you just say?
You heard me. Plus you saw the FBI, Morgan. The gadgets, the tech, the bells, the whistles. It would make our job way too easy, wouldn't it?
All right, well, then I guess I'll see you tomorrow, partner.
I'll be here.
The police station receives an anonymous email with a photo of a tied-up man inside. At first, Adam and his team think it's just a prank. But to be safe, they use facial recognition technology. They identify the victim's home address and decide to investigate in person. Right at the victim's doorstep, they place a mysterious box, challenging the police to solve a puzzle to find the hostage's location. They only have 2 hours. Morgan, though, stays completely calm. Even though the puzzle is totally scrambled, she solves it in just 30 minutes. Once completed, the image reveals a map, but one piece is missing. Clearly, this is a clue the culprit left on purpose. With no other choice, to save the hostage, Morgan and Adam head straight to the park marked on the map. Another game awaits them, with playing cards hanging all over a tree. It's Loco Ocho, a game where they must match colors or numbers. They need to finish the game to choose between Path 1 or Path 2. Adam suggests splitting up to cover both paths, but Morgan immediately refuses. Luckily, the rules are pretty simple. In no time, they find the correct path, which is Path 2. At the end of the path, another children's game appears. While Adam struggles to figure out how to play, Morgan quickly spots a clue hidden inside it.
It's addition and multiplication. It's either hopscotch for hikers or hopscotch for second-grade algebra teachers. It's azimuth and elevation.
Telling us where to go?
No, telling us where to look.
They just need to adjust the horizontal direction, vertical angle, and height correctly. This leads them to the next clue left by the kidnapper, the Valley Days storage facility. Remember the photo of the tied-up hostage? It's pitch black around him, with only the camera flash providing light. The hostage is clearly being held in a storage unit. Using the rental records, they quickly find the severely injured man among a row of small rooms. After being rushed to the hospital, the man says he never saw the kidnapper's face. The kidnapper just kept forcing him to play all sorts of games. But he was so terrified that he couldn't even hold the cards. In the end, the kidnapper bluntly turned him into a pawn in a deadly game with the police. Morgan feels a headache coming on with this case. The culprit leaves no obvious gaps and has no clear motive. With the case still stalled, Selena suggests everyone take a break. Since no one died, the team can attend the police awards party tomorrow night. But before Morgan can even shop for a dress, the police get a report from the hotel hosting the event. Someone placed 3 dolls in the hotel hallway. They have provocative messages written on them, clearly another riddle set by the culprit. The fun has just begun. Since this area is outside the surveillance camera's range and the crowd is too large, the police can't identify the suspect. Morgan carefully examines each doll, even checking the soles of their shoes, but finds no clues. There's no way this is just a simple threat. At that moment, Oz, standing behind, hesitantly speaks up. It turns out he knows the victim from the previous case. They both attended a support group for people who lost loved ones. The victim only mentioned the storage unit during a meeting, meaning the kidnapper is likely a member of the group too. But since Oz rarely attended, he can't recall everyone's faces. He and Daphne meet with the group leader, who reveals a man named David once talked about childhood games he played with his sister. But since his sister passed away, he had no one to play with anymore. A few days ago, David invited the group to a bar to play games, but no one accepted. It's likely that, after being rejected, David took out his frustration on the support group members. As the suspect emerges, Oz plans to call a sketch artist to draw David's face, but the group leader suddenly mentions something odd.
A girl named Sierra, who never missed a meeting, suddenly goes silent today.
She doesn't answer her phone or reply to messages. Oz immediately senses something's wrong and alerts the police. Upon receiving the news, Morgan rushes to Sierra's house. But when she steps inside, she finds the room in complete chaos. Clearly, before being kidnapped, Sierra fought back hard. Why would someone place a bookshelf right in front of the door? The only explanation is that someone moved it on purpose.
Morgan turns off all the lights in the room and pulls the curtains shut.
You can't tell in the dark.
What's something that you can't see in the dark that you can in the light?
Other than everything?
Morgan recalls that Sierra is a sign language interpreter. Plus, the word tell doesn't just mean to speak. It can also mean to direct or reveal something.
Sierra's an ASL interpreter. Maybe that's why he chose her. You can't tell in the dark means you can't talk in the dark, right? You know who can't talk in the dark?
People who are deaf, because you have to be able to see sign language in order to use it.
The dolls. You see their hands? They're all telling us something in sign language.
Each hand gesture on the dolls represents a letter. Morgan quickly tries different arrangements in her head and finally cracks the correct answer.
Pico X1.
That's the name of an art gallery that announced its closure a few days ago and is now up for rent. The police team springs into action and quickly finds Sierra locked in the gallery's safe. But due to the safe sealing mechanism, the oxygen inside is nearly gone. Luckily, the clue for the password is pretty clear, hidden in a children's game painting on the wall.
Game has different names all over the world. The oldest one here being knuckle bones in Central Asia. They used goat and sheep bones as the game pieces, 10 total. Next in South Asia, it's called Unjul Kal, meaning 5 stones. And finally in Japan, they use bags filled with beans, specifically 7 bags of beans.
So, by arranging them in chronological order, the sequence 1057 is the code to unlock the safe. As the safe door swings open, Sierra is rescued safely. Though Morgan wins again, she knows one thing for sure. The culprit is obsessed with games. After losing 2 rounds in a row, he'll definitely want to turn the tables. She hopes the police will cancel tonight's awards ceremony. But Selena firmly refuses. It only happens once every 4 years. How can they cancel it over a kidnapper?
Morgan heads home, feeling helpless.
The only comfort is that her ex-husband and kids, knowing how hard she works, specially bought her a dress for the party. That night, when Morgan shows up at the event looking stunning, Adam can't help but admire her. Turns out his colleague cleans up pretty nicely. But as darkness falls, a masked figure stalks Oz. Oz puts his key in the car, and the airbag suddenly deploys, knocking him out. Daphne is the first to notice Oz is missing. She goes to his building to search but only finds a silk tie on his car, along with an hourglass. On it, a note reads Marco. Clearly, this is David's 3rd game. But this time, the clues are too scarce. Even with Morgan's brilliance, she can only deduce from Marco and the silk tie, linking it to Marco Polo, where polo could also mean warrior. But in Los Angeles, there are thousands of clubs named Warrior. Finding someone hidden so well is nearly impossible. Luckily, Daphne makes a major breakthrough. From the first game until now, David always uses different fonts for his messages. By taking the first letter of each font name and arranging them chronologically, they form a new word.
Roca, yes!
The person named Roca is actually a famous architect. Though he designed many houses in Los Angeles, only one has a pool. The team races to the scene. They find Oz on the verge of suffocating under the pool. Since both female officers are in formal dresses, Adam steps in. He dives in, struggles to unlock the chains on Oz, and finally pulls him to safety. After a tense resuscitation, Oz finally regains his breathing. This means the police win the final game. But a few days later, Oz looks up the property records and tracks down David. Oddly, that person was arrested and jailed months ago. He couldn't possibly have committed the crimes. It turns out the kidnapper used a fake identity to lure the police into his orchestrated game. As the case hits another dead end, Morgan bumps into a kind man at the grocery store. He not only helps her carry her bags but also wins over her kids with his charm. At first, Morgan thinks it's just a normal encounter. But when she gets home, her second son hands her a board game, saying he's not into old-fashioned games like that. She never bought this game for her kids. When she examines the text on the box, a face suddenly flashes in her mind. The culprit always lurks in the shadows, quietly watching her solve his riddles. Now, with just a slight change in appearance, he manages to deliver a game invitation directly to her. Right then, Morgan's phone rings. It's Adam calling. He just looked up some information.
Morgan S. husband, Roman, might still be alive.